Good evening. 25 days to the election and you're on the election center. I am Anki Guta. Let's take a look at our top stories tonight. The witness number 4 scare is the case against Uhuru crumbling. Not yet Uhuru integrity case ruling deferred.
Nobody under the constitution for which Raila has fought for is going to stop us from talking about the land question.
The trouble with land, why politicians won't let go. And lessons from the past, teachers issue strike notice. And we are live from the newsroom here at the Standard Group Center in Nairobi, also live in Kiambu, where Linda Obutu and Rita Tinina are standing by. We'll also be taking you to Mombasa with KTN's Ferdinand Omondi. And at our city center studios, Louis Otieno will be joining us in a short while. But first, one hurdle still stands in the way of the Jubilee Alliance's march to State House. The coalition's presidential aspirant and Deputy Prime Minister Uhuru Kenyatta and his running mate William Ruto now will have to wait until next Friday to find out if they are suitable to run for office. And as KTN's Catherine Omwanto reports, the High Court is being asked to dismiss the integrity case by Uhuru and Ruto's lawyers and let Kenyans decide on their integrity at the polls.
25 days to the election, and yet another legal hurdle has been thrown in the way of the Jubilee Alliance's presidential candidate Uhuru Kenyatta and his running mate William Ruto. A 5-judge bench heard the submissions from both the claimant and the respondents in the case. The claimants, through their lawyers, say the High Court has the jurisdiction to try the case to conclusion and that the matter is not political. However, the same benchmarks used to appoint public officers should also be used to vet those vying for elective posts, a claim the respondents, that is Uhuru and Ruto, rejected.
My lords, our petition has nothing to do with presidential election. If you look at the declaration that we are seeking, we are saying that those who are seeking state office must be taken through the rigors of integrity that other state and public officers are taken through by law.
First, it's speculative. We don't know whether these people will be elected as president. And as Stella Mwini has submitted, the High Court has no jurisdiction to dwell on speculative matters. It's not a justiciable issue.
The argument that the High Court has no jurisdiction to rule on the eligibility of the two politicians stems from the fact that the government has put in place various institutions that can handle such issues, such as the Registrar of Political Parties, a Supreme Court tribunal, and the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. No case has been brought before the Supreme Court or the Chief Justice, and the Registrar of Political Parties, Lucy Ndungo, and IBC have rendered the two fit to vie for office.
Even if they were elected president, the Constitution has removed the jurisdiction of this court from hearing any challenges to a president, sitting president. The Constitution provides that the only forum for challenging a president is through the impeachment provisions by the Senate.
That at this early stage of the implementation of the Constitution, the legitimacy of legal issues have to be interrogated.
The suit challenging the eligibility of Uhuru and Ruto was filed by the International Center for Policy and Conflict. The group is seeking to have the two barred from contesting the March 4th election on grounds of the charges they are facing at the International Criminal Court.
The particular witness number 4 has been brought as a witness because not only has he counted his evidence, but he is saying that the evidence he gave to the International Criminal Court was false, was a fraud, and the advisement to the prosecution has led the prosecution to drop that particular evidence.
The ruling by the 5-judge bench on the 15th of February will have a great impact on the March 4th poll, and therefore all eyes will be on the High Court to see what they decide. Catherine Omwanto, KTN in Nairobi.
Let's follow up on a story that we brought to you last night. And the ICC case against Deputy Prime Minister Uhuru Kenyatta could be crumbling after his defense lawyers questioned the credibility of the case against him following the withdrawal of witness number 4. That's the person whose evidence greatly influenced the confirmation of the cases. Uhuru's lawyers have petitioned the ICC judges to immediately stop his case and refer it back to the pretrial chamber, where judges, before whom they hope that they will drop all these cases on the basis of a lack of evidence. So what exactly are the implications of these latest developments at The Hague? KTN's Eric Njoka explains.
The search for justice for victims of the post-election violence could suffer a big blow, but at the same time offer a huge relief to one of the suspects, Deputy Prime Minister Uhuru Kenyatta, if an application filed at the Trial Chamber 5 seeking to drop his case at the ICC is approved. Uhuru is seeking to reverse his ICC case back to the pre-trial chamber, which in effect will lead to a postponement of his trial, which is due to start on April 11th. Grounds being the fact that the famous witness number 4 has been dropped from the witness list. Uhuru's lawyers Stephen Kay and Gillian Higgins wrote to the court urging it to reconsider the evidence given by witness number 4, who they claim had over time withdrawn his evidence, therefore removing essential facts that could undermine the confirmation of charges' decision. Witness number 4's profile popped up when it was claimed in court that Uhuru was an eyewitness to a State House meeting to plan the chaos. The witness is alleged to have later admitted lying about another meeting at which he implied Uhuru was present when he allegedly met with Mungiki personnel on November 17, 2007.
I think the principle that we must all accept is that you are innocent until proven guilty. And that being the case, the outcome of the court proceedings itself is what one can then use to say whether one is guilty or not and whether a nation will deal with you or not. But as of now, even without hanging over you, there is, you are innocent. And we have been told severally that we cannot travel, we cannot do this. We have never been received any ban from any country.
The Deputy Prime Minister has now listed demands to the ICC, one of them stating that the case against him cannot now stand on its own feet, as it was confirmed on the basis of what he terms fraudulent evidence given by witness number 4.
This will change. So
He adds that ICC prosecutor Fatou Bensouda had stopped relying on the evidence on witness number 4, and therefore the case before the court was not the same one as the one which was confirmed. He also wants the prosecution penalized for failing to draw the attention of the pre-trial chamber to crucial evidence, undermining its case and therefore wasting the court's time. So the pending cases at the ICC have been perceived as a unifying factor between Uhuru Kenyatta and his running mate William Ruto. That if at all the cases are to proceed, they will be in it together. However, with the developments at The Hague and the chances that Uhuru Kenyatta may be off the hook, the future of their union could be in doubt. Eric Njoka, KTN, Nairobi.
And join me now with analysis on this issue is Advocate Harun Dubi. Always a pleasure speaking to you. Let's begin with this. Can the case against Uhuru still proceed without the testimony of witness number 4, whom alleged that there was a meeting at State House between Uhuru and Mungiki members, the basis of which has really formed this entire case?
I think what's most important is to make the distinction that there are judicial proceedings going on against the 4 accused persons, as accused persons before a court of law, and distinguish that from the politics that is going on in the country in terms of whether the case goes on, what implications it is going to have.
But can the case go on?
The case will go on, yes, because the witness may have withdrawn. I do not know the circumstances under which he withdrew, but remember this, that there are certain witnesses and some amounts of evidence or quantities of evidence that the prosecutor has been permitted by the court not to disclose, even with the defense.
So it is possible that the case could continue without OTP4. However, how far do you think the fact that this witness is no longer part of the prosecution's lineup, how far does this affect the credibility of the cases at the ICC?
What I would like to say is this, that as a judicial process, and the prosecutor has a duty to prove her case. The prosecutor has evidence in terms of documentation. There are other witnesses. There is all manner of evidence, circumstantial and direct evidence that she can use to try to link and create that connection that that witness number 4 was probably more convenient to prove. Therefore, I wouldn't say that that has crumbled the case directly. However, of course, one would recognize that without that witness, it is going to mean that the prosecutor has to work a little bit more harder to ensure that she proves the very point that she was going to use that witness for.
Yeah, but the question is, does the case then still meet the threshold of international crimes? If witness number 4 is what was used really largely to solidify that case, and that witness is no longer there, does this then still, there may still be a case to answer, but does it meet the threshold of an international crime?
Because we do not know all the evidence that the prosecutor presented before the pre-trial chamber that admitted the cases, you cannot say, one cannot safely say that therefore the case or there is insufficient evidence to meet the threshold. I would like to say that so long as the evidence, the case is ongoing, recognizing that the accused persons are still required to attend court, and the pre-trial conference is going to be held very soon, the case is still ongoing as a case. Whether the accused persons use this withdrawal as a defense to their own case, which I'm sure they're going to do, that's really for them to use. But you cannot say, one cannot safely argue that that case has been weakened sufficiently to reduce its veracity and therefore possibly say the case cannot go on. In any event,
what about having the case referred back to the pre-trial chamber? Is there a precedent for this?
There is no precedent, but it's possible under the rules to refer back the case in the event that the court recognizes that actually there are issues that require now to be looked at afresh. However, there is also this possibility, like in any other court, that when you do not have this evidence, it is a defense question for them to say, without this evidence from witness number 4 or any other witness, we cannot be convicted. Therefore, be used as a defense issue rather than to say, refer it back to the pre-trial chamber, because the pre-trial chamber is what lawyers in Kenya would call functus official. They have finished their job.
Yes, I just want to press you with one last thing. How far, and I know you said you don't want to touch on the politics, but we must go there because this case does affect what is happening here at home. How far do you think this particular issue will affect local politics? Because it is felt that the Uhuru Ruto ticket is one of convenience, the fact that both of them are facing trial at The Hague. Should one of them possibly not have to face that, how far do you think it would affect their candidature?
The case has all along been a powder keg in our politics. I think what we need to recognize as Kenyans is that this case is about dealing with impunity. Impunity is a product of politics. And therefore, whichever way it goes, whether Uhuru Kenyatta and Ruto are convicted or not, that is not the issue. I think it's important perhaps for the Kenyans to know that this case is not just about those 2 or 4 accused persons, but it's about the victims, about Kenya, about the integrity of a criminal justice system in this country. Therefore, it is going to have an implication on our politics, whether they are convicted or acquitted.
Thank you so much. Always so concise. Thank you very much. Harun Dubi, an advocate at the High Court. We will be crossing to our City Center studios. Of course, a very informative discussion is lined up for you. KTN's Leo Cheno is standing by with a panel of guests who are going to thrash out this issue of insecurity in the country that is, of course, closely related to the issue of unemployment. Louis, to you.
Thank you very much, Anne. And yes, we are now in studio with a host, a panel that will discuss further the issue of the effects of insecurity, the cycle that ties in insecurity, poverty, and what then can be done to alleviate the situation. I have a panel that will be able to give us insights on this. Peter, you've worked in areas where you've discussed and they've dealt with extrajudicial killings. You've dealt with areas where there have been police excesses and also an absence of police intervention within society. You'll be able to tell us a bit of what you do. Mr. Sano, you've done a lot in terms of the socio-economic, let's say, how they tie in terms of insecurity and economic situation in the country. Fatuma, I know you've done a lot of work working with police reforms, and you've been in discussions lately talking about which way forward, reforming the police, but all within the Constitution. Peter, what is highest on your agenda right now?
The highest issue on the agenda now is the implementation of police reforms as outlined in the new constitution and in the various legislation on the police service.
And just a quick review of the status now. Do you have a difficult situation in terms of alleviating excesses that were seen before for lack of information, for lack of better implementation? What is the situation now?
The situation is not very optimistic because we haven't seen any fundamental reforms in the police service. We're just beginning. We've just had the appointment of the new Inspector General, and we highly welcome that appointment, because then the first thing that we would like to see is one single command within the police service.
Right, we'll definitely get into that. A quick introduction to you, Mr. Sano. What are you dealing with at the moment? What is highest on your agenda?
Well, actually, what we're dealing in at the moment is looking at ways of creating jobs for the youth, because it's actually a source of serious insecurity in the country. And the government, in our view, have really not done much in terms of really helping or coming up with some policies that are supposed to be helping create jobs for the youth in the country.
And so the cycle continues. We'll definitely want to explore that more. Yeah. Fatuma, what's the situation with the reforms?
What IPO has done is we've ensured that whatever was recommended by the previous task forces in terms of police reform is actually being implemented. We ensured that the IG is in place and the National Police Service Commission, which is already achieved. We are also hoping that the officers whose ranks have been collapsed, all that will be taken care of by both the IG and the Commission.
Right. In a few moments, we'll definitely get into the detail of that. And you can see the panel that we have in studio. We'll be discussing the detail of that vicious cycle. When there's poverty, there's insecurity. When there's insecurity, what happens to those people who are caught up in it? Which are the institutions that are in place to sort it out? And how do we work out the synergies of all those who are working day and night to make sure that we sort out once and for all the question of insecurity and poverty in this country? Back to you, Anne.
Thanks very much, Louis. Certainly do look out for that at the end of this live newscast. Now back to the news. The emotive land issue is emerging as a major campaign agenda ahead of the March 4th election. Debate on the subject has turned into a war of words between CORD and Jubilee. While the CORD coalition says no person or institution will gag it from articulating land reforms and Jubilee cannot be trusted to implement land reforms, the Jubilee coalition has on the other hand dared CORD to table evidence of their claims against its leaders. Samogina now takes a closer look at the land issue and its place in Kenyan elections.
Debate on land has become a perennial political asset, providing fodder for political fixing in successive election years. Land, in essence, a liability to the disenfranchised peasants and squatters across the country, but a lethal political tool that is now polarizing the country right in the middle.
Nobody under the constitution for which Raila has fought for is going to stop us from talking about the land question.
Inspector General of Police hana uwezo kuzuia Mkenya yeyote kusema chochote angependa kusema wakati huu wa kampeni.
Successive Kenyatta, Moi and Kibaki regimes thrived on playing on the emotive nature of land to secure their grip. Under the Kenyatta reign, the constitution then was amended to give the president immense imperial powers that included allocation of land. Consequently, huge parcels of land in the highlands of central Kenya, Rift Valley and the coastal regions were annexed to be awarded to Kenyatta and his cronies. But with campaigns around the corner, incumbents seeking re-election into office invoked their powers, issuing title deeds, a strategic move to win the hearts of their supporters. And as the bare-knuckle war of words rages on between the Jubilee and the CORD coalition, the land matter appears strategically placed in both of the alliance's manifestos. Jubilee and CORD pledging to resolve historical injustices.
When you see the presidential debate taking the angle of assuming that there is no constitutional direction, there is no policy direction, there is no legal framework directing how to resolve the historical issues, then you start getting worried that either the politicians are ignorant of the law or they are deliberately trying to mislead public for sensation and just populist intentions.
These are issues that are best discussed not wild, emotive public rallies, but issues that people can settle, and discuss on their own.
CORD coalition has defied a gag order over the emotive land issue, claiming that the censure is geared to stop its rival Jubilee coalition from responding to the land question. The coalition has blasted the Jubilee Alliance leadership of illegal acquisition of land, painting Deputy Prime Minister Uhuru Kenyatta as the biggest beneficiary.
If there is any politician in any party who knows of another politician who has stolen land, I will be the first to support that politician that please go to court.
When you mislead in the name of freedom of speech, you mislead public, then you're failing on the matter of integrity.
Raila Amolo Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka are part of the solution insofar as the land question is concerned. Uhuru Kenyatta and Ruto are part of the problem as far as the land question is concerned.
It is raw politics on matters surrounding with the CORD coalition defying a gag order on the subject matter. The coalition continue its bashing on the Jubilee Alliance, with Uhuru Kenyatta as the punching bag for sins of the father. Samogina, KTN, Nairobi.
And that story brings us to our big question tonight. We're asking, do you support the government's gagging of politicians on the land issue? Remember, they did this yesterday. Please do send us your brief comments beginning with a yes or no. Our SMS number is 8040. We will be sampling your comments at the end of this live newscast. Let's move on now, and the school's calendar is yet to recover from the effects of the September strike, and teachers are once again threatening to down their tools over unpaid allowances. The Kenya National Union of Teachers (NUT) has given the Teacher Service Commission up to Monday next week to put all administrative processes in place for immediate payment of 25 billion shillings owed to teachers this financial year, or risk another countrywide strike. NUT Chairman Wilson Sosion says the government has reneged on the return to work formula that was agreed on in September, and consequently the union has no choice but to issue another strike notice.
If teachers were to earn their salaries correctly from 2003 up to now, they have missed out about 600 billion. That is what teachers have missed out. And you know, in any court anywhere in the world, we can lay a demand with interest, and that is granted by any reasonable industrial court. But as of now, we are being fair because we live in this country. We are only saying implement with effect from 1st of January 2013 without arrears. I think we are being fair. And that amounts only to about 25 billion annually. But for these 6 months up to July, before the next financial year, it's only 12 billion. And all what we needed from government is to outline the procedure of implementation.
You know, there are many beautiful things that can be said about Kiambu and its people, but tonight we're focusing on the number 3 issue on Kenyans' minds, and that's the issue of insecurity, which also reigns rampant in that particular part of the country. I want to hand you over back to Linda Ogutu with more.
You're watching Election Center and you're live in the county of Kiambu. Of course, you're looking at the issues that are pertinent to the voters even as we head towards the next general election. And tonight, we will be speaking to William Kabogo, the man who hopes to become the governor in this county. Mheshimiwa, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be speaking to you about all the issues we've been covering, Rita and I, and we're hoping you can shed some light on them. All right, so the county of Kiambu is home to one of the main presidential contenders, that is Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. A lot of people seem to think that his party, that is TNA, enjoys a lot of support in this region, but analysts seem to differ in a small way because they say his party may actually face a lot of competition from smaller parties. Rita Tinina is taking a close look at that story.
Home to one of the main contenders in the presidential race, Uhuru Kenyatta, the agricultural-rich county of Kiambu is once again in the spotlight. On On the streets of Gatundu, little gives away the big quest by one of their own. Uhuru will be seeking to occupy the seat once held by his father, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta. The mention of the name Kenyatta to the older generation evokes memories of the man and his leadership style.
Alikuwa anaheshimiwa tena anaogopewa, apewa heshima. Sio kama hawa akina Kibaki wanatusiwa.
Uhuru is seen to enjoy massive support in the larger central Kenya region, and some locals here say it has nothing to do with his father, nor the fact that he comes from here.
Tunachunguza wengine, tunaona yeye anawachida ako mbele, si sababu ya Gatundu au sababu ya kuwa mtoto ya Kenyatta.
Uhuru was introduced to politics by former President Daniel Arap Moi in 2001. Seen as Moi's protege, he ran for the presidency in 2002 on a KANU ticket and lost to Mwai Kibaki, becoming leader of the opposition in parliament. He set out to prove that he can be his own man. Uhuru will be hoping to be second-time lucky in his quest for the presidency. His home county of Kiambu has the second highest number of registered voters after Nairobi, with just over 860,000 on the voters' roll. But analysts say it may not be a walkover for Uhuru's party, TNA, in other elective positions.
Before the nominations, everybody was talking of Uhuru and the TNA. But when the nomination came, something happened all of a sudden. The people started complaining.
TNA is facing competition from other parties within the alliance as well as without, such as GNU. The county of 12 constituencies will provide the stage for one of the region's critical contests. The gubernatorial race has attracted 4 candidates. Former Juja MP William Kabogo of TNA will be up against former director of the Rockefeller Foundation, Dr. James Nyoro of NAC, former PCEA moderator David Githii of UDF, and APK's Gakuru Kanyanja. Those gunning for the Senate seat are former Kiamba MP Stanley Githunguri of KANU, NAC's George Nyanja, Kimani Wamatangi of TNA, and Sabasaba Asili's Terry Kairu.
Rita Tinina there with the scramble for votes as we head towards the general election. And right now we're looking at the small issues that affect the common man, the issues that have to be sorted before people go and cast their votes. We're speaking to William Kabogo, the immediate former member of parliament for Juja, the man who hopes to become the next governor in this region. Thank you so much for staying with us. I know we've kept you for a while, but let's look at the issue of insecurity. How bad is it in this county?
Well, it's quite bad, because to tell honestly, I mean, you've seen it in the papers every other day that people are mugged here, mugged there, and surely it's because we have less police officers than we would want to have. We have more unemployed people. We have almost 10 out of every 10 people you meet in the streets, 6 or 7 are not working, and they need to eat, they need to do something. So really, to solve the insecurity issue, besides bringing in a better police force, a better trained, more equipped, we need to deal with the issue of unemployment.
But this is something that has been there for quite a while.
It's been growing as time grows. You know, our population is growing, and the police force is not up to date with whatever is happening now in the country. And we need to now match the two. Create more equipment for the police and employ more police officers, new equipment, cameras, all this, and at the same time remove the generation of unemployed back to work, either employment or self-employment through skills, as you've seen in our manifesto in TNA and URP.
Okay, we'll get to the manifestos later, but then you seem to think that unemployment is actually the cause of this.
It is part of the cause.
In the county of
Yes,
Kiambu.
and also corruption in the police force. I mean, guys are not paid well.
Okay.
He's paid 6,000 bob, he has a family. He needs to eat, so he collects 100 bob handout, and life continues.
Stay with us. Of course, the issue of insecurity is not just a concern in the county of Kiambu. In the coast, it is also an issue that the residents there want addressed before the general election, because they say whatever happens with the security that is being observed by leaders will determine a lot in the coming days. Ferdinand Omondi takes a closer look at insecurity in the coastal region. Fadi. Ferdinand Omondi, we are just hoping he can speak to us and get us to understand the insecurity issues at the coastal region that everyone is looking to, because this is it.
The situation
in the county and indeed in the region. I can tell you that tonight it is relatively peaceful, and it is our hope that the peace will be sustained up until the elections so that people can get back to their normal lives. But sometimes the coast region, really, it is hard to decipher whether we have peace or we have calm. It is extremely difficult to know.
Ferdinand Omondi looking at insecurity in the coastal region. Mheshimiwa, let's still stay with the issue of insecurity. And if there's a time frame, in your opinion, in which this has to be sorted out, how long will that be?
Money being available, we see it happening in 24 months. We should be able to bring security back to the people so that even investors will be comfortable to come and work here in Kiambu and in the country. As you say, coast. Who wants to go to Mombasa now? Who wants to? Nobody wants to be involved in this country in as far as investments are concerned because of the high level of insecurity. Okay, we may blame our boundaries with Somalia and other places, but even here, we need to deal with the problem because it's a problem. It's been growing, we've been ignoring it, thinking that it's a problem with the youth, it's a problem with the unemployed, but you're seeing people leaving universities and they have nowhere to go.
So insecurity is one of the issues that is affecting the residents here. The other thing that we found out is abject poverty, Mheshimiwa. How long, how bad really is this? Because if you go by statistics, the county of Kiambu is considered one of the richest, one of the wealthiest. Is it that the wealth is not trickling down?
Yes, it has the wealthiest, but just 10% of the people. Everybody else is poor. If people are working for 150 shillings a day, and he has a family of 6, a packet of unga is 130. So really from 150, you're left with 20 bob for everything else, including rent. So really people live hand to mouth, and this has to change. A new government has to come into place that worries about its citizens so that people can earn a meaningful life. I would imagine a salary of about 600 shillings a day is what would be comfortable, not rich, comfortable for you to survive.
So we need to redistribute this wealth. How do we do that?
We need to create employment. We need to bring in small-scale industries, cottage industries. We need to give the youth skills. The government needs to bring in resources in forms of credit, avail credit to the youth, credit that is cheaper than the banks, 20%, say 4.5%. If you look at Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, they use peer pressure lending without security. And now from a very poor economy, you have this economy now in middle class. India, the same thing is happening. When I was in school in India, it was one of the poorest places to ever want to be in. Everyone with a professor, a degree, a doctorate degree, was in the streets. And now they are busy working. People are working in India for American companies, call centers, etc. So really, we need to create employment and skills for our people.
The ultimate question that every Kenyan is asking, and all leaders would want to know, do voters really look at these pertinent issues when they cast their votes for their leaders? Let's focus on the county of Kiambu.
Most often than not, because again, leaders, what it is that we tell people is, come to me, I'll give you some handout, I'll do this for you, I'll do that for you. And immediately after elections, guys just vanish. Very few of us go back to work.
William Kabogo, the man who hopes to be the next governor in the county of Kiambu, many thanks for speaking to KTN. Let's now take a short break, but stay with us because we have lots more coming your way.
It's your election station, KTN. I am Anki Guto. Welcome back to the election center. Time for our 60-second pitch by politicians on the issue of security.
And as a Jubilee coalition, we shall continue to lend our unwavering support to these reforms that are so vital to peace and stability in our country.
There are issues of security. These have become very prominent once again. They must be given a lot of priority.
Lately, criminals have come at will, attacked and disappeared again, never apprehended and never punished. Police force, rather than protecting us, is too often seen as an aggressor. And that's the reason why I want to see proper reforms of the police force.
Yes, that's what politicians had to say to you. Time now for Corruption Watch. KTN's John Allen Namu live at the Super Wall. John Allen, over to you. Oh, we'll be taking John Allen in a short while. My apologies for that. First, let's cross over to Mombasa, where Ferdinand Omondi continues with this narrative of insecurity that is also rife in the area. Ferdinand, over to you. We'll be speaking to him in a short while. Of course, you'll remember with us the issues in Mombasa that include also the outlawed gang of the Mombasa Republican Council and how that may be affecting security in that area, in addition to the fact that many of them are without jobs. Let's go now, I believe, to the Super Wall with John Allen Namu on the Corruption Watch.
All right, tonight we continue to track corruption trends countrywide using website www.ipaythebribe.or.ke. Remember that website. And tonight, very fittingly, we are where Rita Tinina and Linda Ogutu are. We're in Kiambu. Let's take a look at some of the analytics there. Now, in Kiambu County, you won't believe this. In just 55 bribes reported on the website, 182,501 shillings paid, just 55 bribes, and that's to 3 departments. That's the police, Kenya Power, and the Lands Office. But the story isn't just there. The highest number of bribes paid to this government departments is to the police, 19 bribes out of 55, in line with the bribery indices that have been released in the past. Second, of course, is Kenya Power, with 15 bribes paid to them. Some of these stories are quite familiar to us. 100 shillings paid by one person who was operating along a matatu route. He was a matatu driver, I believe, to a police officer operating along one of those routes in Kikuyu. Now, another story on the other end of the scale. The number is 20,000 shillings paid to a CDF officer so that he could get a local supplier's LPO sign. That's something that we're going to be looking into. Now, remember, you can help us track corruption trends across the country. Keep it on the agenda to make sure that we try and stamp out corruption now and in the next regime. Keep this on the leader's agenda. Back to you in studio.
Thanks very much, John Allen, for that. Time now for a satirical look at politics. Here now is Siasa Remix.
Relative of Raila Odinga. Never. I have been competing in many ways.
Okay. Witness tremendous. Okay. Kalonzo cannot give way to anybody else. Now it is time.
Never.
Maji baridi nimwagie wale wa code.
Sasa hii mchezo leo imepigwa.
Okay. Okay.
Goalkeeper. Amepiga huko juu kule mbele.
In fact, Kalonzo cannot give way to anybody else. Now it is time.
Never. Goalkeeper Fred Gumu. Mpira imeanguka huko mbele kapata Henry Koski. I sang for him.
This is the election center, and in a short while we'll be bringing you the business news. Vivo Energy takes over Shell. We've got the details after these messages.
KTN Business Today is brought to you by Nivea for Men, Maximum Hydro.
And welcome to your business news. Shell Kenya will now be known as Vivo Energy Kenya following the transfer of assets to the majority shareholders Helios and Vitol Oil. Kenya becomes the 14th country to complete the transaction to the Vivo banner following the sale of majority shareholding by the Royal Dutch Shell to new investors in 2011. Despite the change in ownership, the company will continue retailing petroleum products and gas under the Shell brand after acquiring a branding license.
International oil trader Vitol and private equity firm Helios are continuing with the gradual takeover of Shell assets in Africa. Today, the firm announced the running of the Kenyan business under the Vivo Energy banner. Through the deal, both Vitol and Helios have a 40% stake in the company, with Shell maintaining 20%, as well as the branding right to the deal. Vivo Energy will continue the retail side of the business with commercial fuels, gas and lubricants, taking over 114 petrol stations, 1 lube oil blending plant, 2 LPG plants and storage facilities. With vast experience in oil exploration, Vivo Energy has not ruled out the possibility of venturing into exploration in the country.
Some of our shareholders, i.e. for example Vitol, are already in upstream. For example in Ghana, Ivory Coast, and the Eastern Republics around Russia. So they are already in that field, so we will leave them do that because they have the expertise, we don't. Helios, for example, Investment Partners, has recently taken a share in a field in Nigeria, so they are also looking at those opportunities. So our investors, our shareholders are in that domain. So tomorrow if there are opportunities in Kenya, I am sure they will look at it.
The company has also appointed Polycarp Gade as a country manager after he stepped down from his post at Tiger Brands last week. His immediate task will be to grow Shell's market share that has been eroded slightly to under 17.8%.
I've spent the last 2 days listening to the Vivo Energy team, and you can't find any better caliber of people in any industry. So I'm really, really delighted to be joining that team and to be one amongst them, and to go and grab market share. We know it's there. That market share is there to be fetched. We shall fetch it. We shall wake up every morning with Vivo to earn the right to every single point of market share in Kenya.
The partnership is also solid in view of the 2 new shareholders' other business interests in Africa, with Shell retaining upstream operations in Africa, mostly in exploration. Michael Karanja, KTN Business Today.
Concord Insurance has been placed under statutory management by the Insurance Regulatory Authority, IRA. In a statement to newsrooms, IRA head Sami Makove noted that the firm had in recent months failed to meet its obligations. Particularly, the IRA noted that Concord was unable to deliver payment of claims to claimants and policyholders as well as other creditors. The insurer, it had added, was also not able to meet its statutory obligations, including the payment of levies as prescribed in the Insurance Act. As a result, Charles Osoro Makone has been appointed as the statutory manager of Concord Insurance. Let's now take a look at the business wrap.
Kenya is considering a ban on the importation of cables to curb counterfeits that cost the industry over 300 million shillings annually. According to Industrialization Permanent Secretary Cyrus Njiru, the ministry is mooting plans to stop product inflows with a view of encouraging local consumption. He was speaking during the unveiling of an SMS-based verification system by the East African Cables to help it from losing its market share to counterfeits. Elsewhere, low-cost airline FastJet is in dispute over the rights to use the Fly 540 brand in Angola, Ghana and Tanzania. The brand's owners 540 Aviation says it had withdrawn the license it had granted FastJet operations in the three nations to use the Fly 540 brand because FastJet owes it over $7.7 million in outstanding licensing fees. FastJet is currently in talks with the local airline JetLink for a possible joint venture.
And now time for your financial markets review.